Welcome, fellow explorers. My name is Christian Alexanderson, and this is Hemlocks to Hellbenders, a podcast highlighting Pennsylvania's parks, forests, and great outdoors. Spanning 85,000 acres across 3 central Pennsylvania counties, Michaux State Forest is a sanctuary of lush woodlands, crystal clear streams, and a rich tapestry of history and wildlife. Considered Pennsylvania's cradle of forestry, Michaux State Forest is nestled in the Appalachian Mountains, giving visitors a bevy of settings to explore all year long. Whether you're an avid hiker, a history buff, or simply someone who finds solace in the serenity of nature, Michaux has something for you. This forest isn't just a beautiful backdrop, it's a living, breathing piece of our natural heritage. The forest features 4 natural areas that highlight Michaux's woodlands, animal habitats, bodies of water, and so much more. Michaux is home to diverse forests of oak species such as chestnut, scarlet, northern red, black, and white oaks. The forests are also home to red maple, black birch, black gum, hickory, pine, and tuliptree. It makes sense that these wonderfully varied forests are named after pioneering botanist Andre Michaux. The area that bears his name and was the site of the first forestry school are celebrated because of its natural diversity and beauty. Aside from its natural wonders, Michaux State Forest holds stories of Pennsylvania's indigenous peoples, early settlers, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and countless adventurers who roamed its trails. Around every tree, something special can be found while exploring Michaux. For example, there's Camp Michaux, a former World War II prisoner of war camp that can be found just in the boundaries of the state forest. Then there's the Carball Run Natural Area, which protects several archaeological sites where early Native Americans quarried stone and produced spear points and arrowheads. The state forest doesn't just have a fascinating past, but it's got a promising future. The Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources will be replacing the current Michaux Forest District office with a new resource management center. The project will increase public areas conserved as habitat and restore it as a free public resource for visitors and all outdoor recreation users. The aim of the project is to better serve visitors, residents, and district forest needs. But before we learn more about the forest, here's the stats. Michaux State Forest is an 85,000-acre forest located in Cumberland, Franklin, and Adams counties. Available activities include hiking, mountain biking, horse riding, ATV riding, picnicking, fishing, hunting, shooting range, golfing, camping, sightseeing, snowmobiling, and cross-country skiing. A notable feature of the park is its lush hardwood forests. Michaux State Forest is named after French botanist Andre Michaux, who discovered and named numerous plants during the 18th century. Nearby towns include Shippensburg, Chambersburg, Greencastle, Carlisle, and Gettysburg. State lands that close by include Mont Alto, Caledonia, Pine Grove Furnace, and Kings Gap State Parks. You may enjoy the forest if you enjoy a rugged wooded landscape with inescapable beauty. I'm excited to welcome Suzanne Hartley to the podcast. Suzanne is the Environmental Education Specialist in Michaux State Forest. Suzanne, thanks for joining the program.
Thanks for having me.
How would you describe Michaux State Forest to someone who's never been there before?
I would describe it as 90,000 acres of state forest land that starts around Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and ends close to Maryland. And it's about peanut shaped. It's sort of divided up into 2 sections, the northern end of the forest and the southern end of the forest, which divided by Route 30. It's got a rich history, It's been, it was used for agriculture, and then the iron industry. There were several iron furnaces across the forest, and you can still see that through what seems like an endless amount of charcoal hearths across the forest. And then part of our forest was even used during World War II as a prisoner of war camp in the Camp Michaux Bunker Hill area. So it has a lot of history. Ecologically, it's the northernmost terminus, or the end or the start, depending how you want to look at it, of the Blue Ridge Mountain range. And so that provides a unique mix of both northern and southern species. So some southern species that might be more common in Virginia and North Carolina are found here in Pennsylvania, and that might not be found in other parts of Pennsylvania. So it's kind of this own distinct region. And it's a beautiful forest. People will tell you that depending where you go in the forest changes a lot. And so depending on the season and place you are, you can have a completely different experience in the northern part of the forest than you do in the southern part of the forest. And I think those different experiences are what keep people coming back.
What do you love most about Michaux?
I think what I love most is the complexity of Michaux. So the forest changes as you go across it. It's different. No spot in the forest is the same. And I think a lot of people will tell you that, like, depending on the season or where you're in the forest, it can be different. Our clerical assistant says that some places look like there's dragons there, some places there's fairies. I think a lot of people like how different the forest is. And then also a lot of people kind of like you described it as being your backyard. A lot of people have that same sentiment that this forest is their backyard. We're close to a lot of major cities. So there's Shippensburg, Carlisle, Harrisburg, Gettysburg, Chambersburg. But then also not too far away are Baltimore and Harrisburg. And so we're one of the most used state forests per acre.
Oh,
So
wow.
we get a lot of recreation. So people say they love the Michaux because it feels like their backyard and um, they love to get out in solitude. So it's a big patch of green close to a lot of cities that people can get out and feel some sense of solitude. Um, and I just love to be out here and looking for plants and animals and nature. So that's why I live in the show.
Is there something you think everyone should experience when they visit?
This is a tough question because there's not one experience I think everyone's experienced. But that the great thing about Michelle is that there's so many different recreation opportunities, but there's not one thing that we would send everybody to. So I think most people can probably find a great experience in Michelle, but there's not one experience that we'd send everybody to. So no, not one experience.
Well, you spoke about the activities. Let's get into that. Anyone who visits Michelle has their choice of activities all 4 seasons. What are some of the things visitors can do? What are some of the activities they can participate in?
Yeah, so in the winter, when we get enough snow, which hasn't happened in the last few years, there is snowmobiling and skiing. There's also, we have ATV trails. We have a target range that people can go sight in their guns or target shoot. We have Long Pine Run Reservoir, which offers kayaking and electric motor boating. We have hiking trails, mountain biking trails, horseback riding is another big activity that we have on the forest. And then just sightseeing, bird watching. And there's a lot of, I'm probably missing something because camping. There's so many that it's hard to keep track of them all.
Well, that's the great thing about having a state forest is that the activities really open up just because of the amount of space and the amount of things that you're able to do. Sometimes parks are a little bit smaller. You're not able to really get everything that you might want to do. A forest really provides opportunities for really anything that you want to get involved with.
Absolutely. Yeah. We also have rock climbing. There's so many different opportunities in the forest, which is why I say there's not one experience. I think people come here for those different activities. And so if you're going to come here for rock climbing, we'd send you a different spot than you were if you were ATVing or horseback riding or mountain biking. So I think, like I said, I think there's a little bit of something for everybody, just not one experience for everyone.
If you're involved in outdoor recreation, you'll find something at Michelle.
Yes.
What kind of hiking trails are there in the state forest?
Yeah, so we have some hiking only trails. We have the Beaver Trail, which follows the Long Pine Run Reservoir for about a mile out and back. We have Pole Steeple, which is a really popular trail. It starts in Pine Grove and then you cross the road into Michaux State Forest. Provides a really excellent overlook. We also have the Buck Ridge Trail, which takes you from Pine Grove to Kings Gap. And so you wind through Michaux State Forest to get between those two state parks. And we also have over 30 miles of the Appalachian Trail run through us. So we're in that peanut shaped of the state forest. We're split in half by the Appalachian Trail. So the Appalachian Trail runs right through the middle of Michaux. And so a lot of people use Michaux State Forest as the access point to the Appalachian Trail.
And you're also nearby Pine Grove Furnace, which is one of the most accessible areas of the Appalachian Trail. It's the halfway point, and it also has a small paved section that, if you want to say, I hiked part of the Appalachian Trail, you can do it very easily.
Yes, I took my parents who have some mobility issues there and was able to like take a picture of them as AT hikers, which was a really fun experience.
And if any listeners are interested, we did an episode with the Friends of Pine Grove Furnace State Park, so you can listen to that episode too. If a visitor has a full weekend to explore the forest, what would you recommend they do?
Yeah, I think this is a really tough question because I think it gets back to depending on your interest is where we're going to send people. So I don't think, I think it's hard to say you should go do this because it really depends on what your interests are. If you're an ATVer or a hiker or a mountain biker, or some of you could be all of those. Um, I think the forest is generally split up into like a northern section and a southern section, kind of divided by Route 30. I think a lot of people tend to spend a lot of time in one or the other. So if you had a weekend, maybe exploring both parts might be a good suggestion. Getting out of that comfort zone of being either in the north or the southern end of the forest.
And now, let's hear from our sponsors. Registration is now open for the Keystone Trails Association's 25K Trail Challenge taking place on September 7th. Open to both trail runners and hikers, the KTA 25K Challenge is the perfect opportunity to push yourself to the limit. With steep climbs, rocky terrain, fantastic vistas, and scenic forest hollows along the picturesque lower Susquehanna River Gorge. Participating in this challenge helps further the organization's mission of protecting, preserving, and providing safe and enjoyable hiking opportunities within Pennsylvania. Register today at kta-hike.org. Are you looking for your next adventure? Unlock some of the best landscapes in Pennsylvania with incredibly detailed, highly curated, waterproof trail maps from the folks at Purple Lizard. They create extraordinary maps of Pennsylvania State Forest for people who love to explore the outdoors. Find them at your local outfitters, bike shops, and bookstores, or visit purplelizard.com, where your next adventure begins. Hey podcast explorers, do you know Pennsylvania State Parks and Forests are the heartbeat of our Commonwealth? They're not just natural wonders, they're vital for our well-being and local economies. That's where the Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation steps in. They rally volunteers, raise funds, and advocate for these precious lands. Join the movement to preserve and enjoy our outdoor treasures. Learn more at paparksandforests.org. Let's keep Pennsylvania untamed and beautiful together. All right, back to the show. What's your favorite thing to do, Michaux?
My favorite thing is to, I really like looking for plants, animals, insects. And I think a lot of, if you ask a lot of our staff, that's something similar they like to do. We have a lot of staff who like fishing, hunting is a big thing that folks like to do. And then also just getting outside and having that solitude, exercising or finding cool plants and mushrooms like I like to do.
Can you think of a special experience that you had in Michaux? I know I have had, luckily I've been able to explore the state forest system a little bit, and I just remember so many great things about Michaux, not only the beauty of seeing things, but the sunlight through the trees and just these moments that you kind of capture on a day-to-day basis. If you spend some time there, is there anything that while you're walking around or while you've spent time in the state forest that you kind of had that you remember?
I saw my first rough grouse recently, and it wasn't a very close experience. Like it wasn't very far away from me, and I think that's kind of a memorable experience because we do a lot of work for habitat improvement, including for grouse. So it's in a section that where we were trying to do some habitat improvement, and then to see the grouse there is pretty rewarding. That you can like see that their grouse are going to be there.
And for those that don't know, that's the state bird of Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Michaux has 70 miles of shared use trails for like mountain biking and cross-country skiing, horseback riding. How popular do you see those activities in the forest?
Yeah, I think the shared use trails are probably our most popular activity. Michaux State Forest is known for a lot of mountain biking, and we do have a lot of horseback riding, especially in our Mount Hope area, which is in the southern portion of the forest. It's a popular horseback riding area. So that's one of our shared use trails are some of our biggest use trails. We only have a few hiking trails, but we have, yeah, there's some miles of hiking of shared use trails. And we're working right now on a lot of trail assessments to improve those trails, to make them more sustainable trails and more like a more sustainable trail network. So if you look at our trails, sometimes they connect from one place to another and don't really make loops. And we're working to try to build a more sustainable trail system in both our northern section of our forest and the southern section of our forest.
I know motorized recreation has become really popular in Pennsylvania. You spoke a little bit about it, but could you provide some more information about ATV and snowmobiling trails?
Yeah, we have 30, almost 40 miles of ATV trails in one section of our forest that can be accessed from two main parking areas, either Big Flat parking area or our Piney parking area. And those ATV trails are open from May to September, and then they close for maintenance and then open again from December until about March or April. And then they close again for spring maintenance. So people can come from all over and ride those approximately 40 miles of ATV trails. And then we have many more miles of snowmobile trails. Like I said, we haven't gotten much snow in the last few years to make snowmobiling actually doable, but we have over 130 miles of snowmobile trails. So the snowmobile trails also go on a lot of our shared use trails as well in the wintertime.
Michaux has four separate wild and natural areas. They're set aside to protect unique or unusual biologic, geologic, scenic, and historical features, or to showcase outstanding examples of the state's major forest communities. Do you have a favorite?
I don't have a favorite. So our natural areas, we have four. We have Beartown Woods, Carwell Run, Meeting of the Pines, and Mount Sidonia Natural Area. And our natural areas are very natural. They don't have any like trails. Some of them don't even currently have like signage saying that you're there. So I don't have a favorite because if I don't want to send folks to places where there's not really the infrastructure for them to go hiking to. Um, but meeting of I can talk about them if you
Yeah,
want.
please.
Okay, so Carwell Run is a natural area for its cultural and geological history. Meeting of the Pines gets its name from it's the meeting of five species of pines, some of the northern species and some of the southern species, since it is that Blue Ridge Mountain physiogeological region, if you want a big word. So it's pitch pine, tabletop mountain pine, white pine, shortleaf pine, and Virginia pine all meet at the meeting of the pines. So that's where it gets its name. Mount Sidonia is protected as a natural area for its vernal pools. And Beartown Woods was recently, I think last year, inducted to the Old Growth Network. And it's a unique sort of um, mix of where some northern hardwood species that you don't really find the south and the part of Pennsylvania grow there. So that's why it's a natural area. So each one of them are in there, are in a natural area for a different reason, which is why one it's hard to pick a favorite. And they all have, their own distinct little bit. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of hiking trails in those areas.
There are 7 scenic vistas in the state forest. Do you have a vista recommendation for visitors to check out?
Yeah, I do. I would recommend checking out Dark Hollow Vista. I think that's one of our best vistas. It's easy to access. It's right off of Stillhouse Road. So it's great for sunrises too in spring and fall. So if you are able to wake up that early, it's a good place to check out. Some of our other vistas are growing in, so they might not be as scenic as they might have been in years past.
What sort of camping is available in Michaux?
We have three different types of camping. We have motorized camping where you can park your RV or car alongside of a road and there's a campsite right there. We have roadside campsites that are more walk-in, so you might need to walk in not too far, but a little bit into the campsite. And then we also have some of our parking areas are also campsites. So Piney, Big Flat, and T-Berry parking areas also have campsites attached to them. And so those are places where you might be able to have a larger RV or more people staying at a campsite. And so in November of this past year, 2022, State Forest switched to using Reserve America. So now you can reserve your campsites online as well, just like state parks.
Now, I know you might say there's no bad season to visit Michaux. Do you have a favorite season?
So I have a favorite season. I really like spring because I'm a big fan of spring ephemeral wildflowers, and there's definitely a lot of unique spring ephemeral wildflowers here in Michaux. Spring would be my favorite season. I think any season we have people use the forest through all seasons. I will say winter can be tricky because we don't do winter maintenance to our state forest roads. So if you are looking to get out in the winter and it has snowed or there's icy conditions, I would hesitate people to come out unprepared to be on our state forest roads. But otherwise, since we don't get as much snow, the forest is a great time to be here all year long.
Can you talk a little bit about Camp Michaux?
Yes. So Michaux, we also call it Bunker Hill. We've been doing a lot of work up there to remove some invasive species, but it was originally a farm, Bunker Hill Farm, which then became a CCC camp, which then was turned into a prisoner of war camp to interrogate German and Japanese prisoners of war during World War II. And then eventually, within a year after that, it became a church camp until like around the 1970s. And then the lease for the church camp came up, and then it became a back to the forest. So if you go there today, you can still see foundations of all of that history, from the agriculture to CCC to World War II to church camp, and then today the forest is reclaiming that area.
And you can get a map for like a walking tour too, right?
Yeah, the Cumberland County Historical Society has a really good walking tour and map.
Do you have any tips for people who plan on visiting the forest?
Yeah, I think if you're going to visit the forest, there's a couple things that would improve your experience. One is to know that cell phone service is spotty throughout the forest. So knowing that and planning ahead is a great option. I would recommend bringing a paper map. You can find our maps on our public use maps on our website or at our kiosk at our district office. I would also say that we have a lot of informal trails across the forest, so trails created by forest users, which we don't necessarily maintain. So I would recommend checking out our public use map and some of our other maps that are on our website for our designated trails that we promote for people to use. And then I would say, look, tell somebody where you're going. The more that you know where you're going and what the kind of forest has to provide, the better your experience will be.
Well, Suzanne, I want to thank you so much for being able to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I want to thank my guest, Suzanne Hartley, for joining the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Meta for more information about upcoming episodes. You can support the podcast by buying merch at hemlockstohellbenders.com, or you can click support the show in the podcast description to provide a monthly donation. If you're a Pennsylvania business interested in advertising with the podcast, email us at hemlockstohellbenders@gmail.com. This has been Hemlocks to Hellbenders. I'll see you out there. Hosting, production, and editing by Christian Alexanderson. Music by John Sauer. Graphics by Matt Davis.